Harrison Price for Friday, December 6th, 2024, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. In this show, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets, so whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sakaris alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches and conducting things. And you would think that 4 Junos might get you some sway at concert venues, but alas,
Mike's got nothing there.
He can't help me in the least. He's worked for all these huge names in the music world as an audio engineer, arranger, mixer, and yet he's got nothing for Taylor Swift tonight at BC Place.
I'm realizing I'm missing my booster seat.
Blake uses a booster seat, everybody, like a child.
Yeah. There we go. Much better.
Is that so that you're level with me? I'm an awfully tall fellow.
It's not. Our counters are too high, so it was doing this to my shoulders, and it was putting my neck out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
So it's better.
Our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question today, and please forgive us. Normally we stick to sports, right?
Yeah. Like you've told us for years, right?
We've got
Stick
people
to sports.
in the oh my God, the lobby is starting to fill up. There are balloons, there are streamers, there are cardboard cutouts. There are young women taking photos of us in the studio. Perhaps they think we're connected in some way. They would be wrong.
We're pre-gaming. Pre-gaming T-Swizzle.
They would be wrong. Mm-hmm. Which tickets would you rather use? Use, not resell. Get your head out of the capitalist gutter here. Which tickets would you rather use tonight? If we give you 4 Canucks lower bowl seats or 2 Taylor Swift upper bowls, where are you going? Go to BC Place to see the icon? You going to see the Vancouver Canucks against the Columbus
against
Blue
Sean
Jackets.
Monahan.
We've got some incredible comments already on this poll on X.
No, by the way, I no one sees your vote.
That's right. This is anonymous.
Mm-hmm. You can just vote with your heart, maybe with your mind, but no one needs to know what your vote is.
The comments have been greatly amusing. Austin and Langley, not even a Swiftie, but I feel like comparing it to Columbus on a Friday is tough. Yeah.
This was our motivation.
Smooth Media, forgettable Canucks game versus bottom feeder, or the highest grossing tour of all time from a pop icon in her absolute prime. Okay. I am betrothed. I have to pick Taylor Swift here because I'm actually on the resale market, and forgive me if you see me looking at my phone periodically here over the next hour because I'm still trying to get her there. Just need 1 ticket.
Lyndon in the chat is hearing T Swift to Anaheim for future considerations.
Will there be any salary retention?
None. If they're not retaining on Trouba.
How is Anaheim taking on all of Jacob Trouba's $8 million ticket?
Well, they weren't exactly
Dear
in a tough
God.
spot.
Anaheim.
This is really.
You're just letting them off the hook.
This is going to unlock Zegras. You just watch.
Vankinen and a 4th-round pick, and you're going to pay Trouba $8 million next year to go headhunt people in a division you got no hope of winning.
As many have pointed out, Radko Gudas and Jacob Trouba
on the same
team.
Oh, my God. And the Canucks have a lot of games left against Anaheim as well.
George Peros just has a bat phone directly to Anaheim now.
George Peros is like, I made my name with the Ducks, and now I will be hearing from them often.
Mm-hmm.
Are you voting Canucks or are you voting? Because, I mean, if you think of opponents that are a lesser draw than the Columbus Blue Jackets, please do advise.
Yeah.
I think that might be 31 of 31.
Yeah.
In terms of draws here in Vancouver.
even Sunday's game, which is also toe-to-toe with the Vancouver Canucks, boasts one of the top 10 players on the planet on the team in Nikita Kucherov.
Yeah, that's a 1 p.m. though. You could feasibly do both.
You could feasibly do both.
Yeah.
I'm going to go. I mean, again, we're talking free tickets here. I'm going to Taylor Swift.
Yeah, of course.
And that's a once in a lifetime, I would think, opportunity.
These prices, yes.
There are 40 other games on the Canucks schedule this season alone in which to catch them.
I mean, some of these resellers do want a body part in Oregon.
And as you said, if you ranked the Canuck home dates, who comes 41st in terms of priority to watch?
Probably the Columbus Blue
this
Jackets. One. The only thing redeeming about this one is it's on a Friday night. You probably don't have to work tomorrow, so you can get a little tipsier at tonight's Canucks game than you would for a Tuesday game.
Now, let's not get us wrong. We're going to talk much of the next 90 minutes on this game. So we're not going to belittle it completely.
Well,
but here's the thing. It's a very curious game. There's a lot of storylines we're going to get into about home record, road record, first game back after a road trip. There's a lot of interesting aspects to this game, but none that can't be watched on PVR after the T-Swizzle concert.
It's lease month at Surrey Mitsubishi. Leasing a car, better option, lower monthly payment, flexibility to drive a new car every few years, convenience, staying under warranty, minimal maintenance cost, plus you avoid the long-term commitment of ownership, the depreciation hit. This month at Surrey Mitsubishi, you can lease an Outlander PHEV 2024. We're driving that vehicle. It is absolutely amazing. I adore it. It's $182 a week. If you need a gas option, the Outlander Gas 2024 again, yours for just $105 a week. The Eclipse Cross just $100 a week, and the RVR only $87 a week. Plus, skate away with a $1,000 winter tire credit, no charge, 2-year maintenance package, and don't miss out on this $5,000 government rebate on the Outlander PHEV while it lasts. See dealer for details. All terms, all leases are OAC. Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey, or online at surreymitsubishi.ca.
Sloppy Joe says I'd buy Blue Jackets season tickets over one Swift ticket.
And I get that.
Probably
if
cheaper,
you're
too.
not a Taylor Swift fan, I'm sure you don't quite get what the fuss is about.
But that's also one of the reasons why I'd be willing to go is I would like to see what all the fuss is about. Again, for free tickets, I'm not paying.
So is it offside to compare this to Beatlemania? Is this Beatlemania big? Is this Michael Jackson in Japan big? You remember? He would show up at Tocchet.
I think unequivocally it is. I mean, I think it's measurably the same.
Yeah, I think you're in that ballpark.
Yeah, we're not comparing the artistic merits, folks. We're just comparing mania.
Yeah, exactly. Like you and I are both roughly the same age, have been on this planet nearly a half century. Some of us are closer to that anniversary than the other one, but. I cannot think of many acts in music that would be bigger.
No,
than
right now, none.
Right now, in my lifetime.
Yeah.
We're not old enough for Beatlemania, but this one is right up there. I can't think of many sporting events where the markup on tickets is what we're seeing here. Like, you could go to a Super Bowl for less money than to go to one of these concerts, and she's done, dozens, hundreds of them over the last few years?
Michael Jackson, Madonna in their primes would have been there.
I don't think Madonna's anywhere close to this.
You don't think so?
No. MJ, yes.
I think Madonna was close.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah. Stones.
No, I'm not. I mean, I've seen the Stones at two pretty big stadiums. But but there's also nothing like this.
But there's also not the cultural buy-in. Like, there's the cultural buy-in part of this.
You're not lying.
Yeah.
Like, I went to see the Stones in 2002 or 2003, Blake, because I thought to myself, wow, this is an iconic band. I better catch them while they're still touring.
That's what I thought when I saw them in 88. Literally, we thought Steelers Wheels was probably...
Now, what I will say...
Or Steel's Wheels.
Taylor's got a long way to go to be the Stones, to be a thing 50 years on, still touring and selling out houses, right?
Yeah.
It's not crown or ass just yet. But this is a really big deal. Top story today brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery, Home Sweet Home with Demko backing up. The Canucks Vezina finalist goaltender will be the backup to Kevin Lankinen tonight.
He suited up in uniform
for the first time this season. And let's all pray, let's all say a little prayer for Kevin Lankinen going into this one. Because if he gets hurt in game, this will be the most dramatic Canucks backup goalie situation since
Johan Hedberg.
Schneider coming in for Luongo in the United Center in the midst of that great playoff game.
Okay,
Or are we going all the way back to Chris Levesque for Johan?
No,
Hedberg?
yours is fair. First,
remember, that was one of those Hawks Canucks games that was just teeming with electricity. An extraordinary game, and all of a sudden,
Schneider's coming up.
And then, of course, Luongo has to come back in because Corey's cramping up. And the noise at the United Center that night, there are Chicago sports media people who will tell you they have not heard the United Center that loud since that moment when Louis had to walk up the tunnel. Remember? And the madhouse on Madison was just that.
Was that Gilman and Gillis versus the World? Was that
I'm not sure it was that game.
Four?
I want to say it was the next game. Of course, they played 3 years in a row, so they'd all.
It was that series. It was that series. Yeah, sure it was. Yeah.
But it honestly felt like Christians and Lions that night in the United Center with the way that crowd was baying for blood.
Is it Luongo on the throne in Anaheim?
There's that one too. Yeah, I've had Chicago media people tell me, not since Jordan and the Bulls winning a championship had they heard that building that loud.
Yeah.
And Thatcher's a possibility Sunday in this matinee against the Tampa Bay Lightning, although he didn't sound sort of quite that confident. Yeah, Thatcher has done a pretty good job of tamping down expectations here upon a return.
No kidding.
He was doing that yesterday. Let's take a watch and listen and come back and discuss.
Pretty day to day, which is great. We're kind of out of that week-to-week window now. And so it's been a lot of communication with Marco and talk. And, I think I'm at a point now where, I could potentially, have a discussion with him and be available to back up or what have you, between now and probably the next 3 games. So I think that's kind of the window we're looking at and kind of see what each day brings.
So he said week to week now could potentially have that discussion about backing up. So it was couched upon couch.
So many couches.
Exactly.
It's a lazy boy factory. Yeah.
So you're going to have to really sift through that quote to try and decipher where he's at. Clearly traction's being made, the fact that he's backing up. But are we talking another week? Are we just talking about 48 hours? Is he overplaying the caution there? Part of me thinks that, Matt, that he's overplaying the caution, just completely reducing expectation, but really that he is ready to go.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I
think you're right. And I look forward to seeing him play whenever that may be.
Yeah.
Tocchet spoke yesterday, said he's looked good in practice. The ball's in his court. He was given that full net in practice yesterday because he felt when you're that close, I need to see a full practice. You hold down one of the 2 cages. Didn't want to share it. And Tocchet also said, look, I don't need to push this guy. He knows his body. He's going to make the call. And here's the thing. Speaking of a live expectant audience, the Vancouver Canucks have a lot of making up to do with you, the season ticket subscriber, and the ticket buyer at Rogers Arena. Because as happy as we are with these road trips that have gone tickety-boo and winning games, missing Demko and missing Miller and missing Roenick, missing Besser and missing Joshua, 3-5-3 at Rogers Arena as they embark on this 6-game homestand that takes them all the way up to December 16th. Columbus, Tampa, St. Louis, Florida, Boston, Colorado. Not exactly a murderer's row.
No.
Defending Cup champion is in there. Yep. Team that a lot of people liked as a Western Conference heavyweight. Colorado is in there. Not quite there, Colorado, through the opening quarter. Team that's been a perennially good top of the table Eastern Conference team. Boston, not quite there anymore. I'll give Tampa a lot of credit and Brisebois. They are hanging on and keeping the window more ajar than I thought they would after trading so many young players and draft picks for so many years, including that catastrophic Tanner Jeannot trade. Remember how many draft picks they traded for Tanner Jeannot?
Mm-hmm.
So good on Tampa for doing that, but, Columbus, St. Louis, I think you're fretting. Florida's not exactly having a
Tocchet sounded worried that
heavyweight season in their Cup defense.
Tocchet sounded worried that it's in their head a little bit now.
Mm-hmm. Well, Florida's been good, though. Should give them more credit. Tocchet is concerned that it's in their head. In fact, he was a little hesitant to talk about it yesterday because he didn't want to build it up even further.
Right.
He said that. He said perhaps it's on preparation, and he said he was going to change things up. We're going to talk to Jeff here in a bit, and Jeff can edify on that. But he also said we found our game on the road, and now it's just time to play it at home. And, of course, when we talk about them finding their game, we're talking about skaters because for the most part, Kevin Lankinen, other than a little fatigue when he had a rocky stretch of 3 starts in 4 games, he has been aces.
Been so good.
Oh, I mean, do you think of how much more time and angst we would have spilled on Thatcher Demko, Blake, and his absence, if not for the exploits of Kevin Lankinen? And let's hear from the Canucks starting goaltender tonight, Kevin Lankinen, on, now he knows Thatcher's coming back. Here's what he had to say.
It was a big question mark, just not for myself, but for him. And having the opportunity to come here, I think I was just going day by day. Obviously, not knowing what Dimmer had, and that's his kind of a thing to deal with. I've been just living one day at a time and taking every opportunity I've been given and trying to just prove that I worth the job and worth more starts here. And it's obviously good to see a teammate coming back, and I know it's been a long road for him, and hopefully he'll feel good because he's a big part of the team, and I'm sure he will help us win. But at the same time, I'm just only focusing on my own job and making sure that I'm ready to go whenever they need me to.
Can I give you a cross-sport comparison here in Vancouver? Kevin Lankinen is Vernon Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Did the job and said all the right things and was a spectacular teammate. I'm getting those vibes from Kevin Lankinen.
Yeah.
Especially with the way the other guys talk about him.
Well, the difference, though, is that Vernon Adams under a contract needed to be traded ultimately by the BC Lions. Kevin Lankinen parlayed this in a contract year.
Going to get paid.
So he comes out winner upon winner here, does Kevin Lankinen. He's helping his team win right now in the present while building up the evidence for him to get paid. Now, he's not going to get $8 million a year, but he all of a sudden gets paid multiple $1 million per year over multiple years as of next year.
Yep. And Demko's taking notice as well. Here's Thatcher on Lankinen.
Well, I want to give Lanks all the credit in the world. I mean, he's been unbelievable this year. It's been really fun to get to know him and be able to watch him play. And, it's a challenging position that he was put in coming into a new team and being able to, manage the workload that he's been given. For me, I'm managing my expectations a little bit. I think it'd be foolish to say that I'm going to come back and be, perfectly sharp and feel like I have my A game in game 1. Obviously, that takes a little bit of time. Just seeing game reps and things is kind of the last step of fully doing the rehab. So I'm not really putting an expectation on that. Obviously, the way Lanks has played, it kind of takes a little bit of pressure off of myself to come in and not feel like I have to save the world. And, again, I'm taking it day by day.
Let me ask you this.
Second, Lankinen has taken the pressure off, but that's the second time that Demko has sort of downplayed how good he'll be upon return.
Yeah.
You can tell he's a little suspect there.
last year, I think people forget, there was a lot of stories on Casey DeSmith's play last year.
Yep.
Like
and rightfully so.
He played pretty well.
Until down the end when he had to be the starter, and that was a bridge too far.
But going into the playoffs, I think there was pretty good confidence that, heck, because Demko had just come back. Hey, if Demko can't go, at least the Canucks have a veteran backup in Casey DeSmith.
Yep.
If this happens again this year, where Demko's available to start game one, is there more confidence in Kevin Lankinen than you had in DeSmith last year, do you think?
Yes.
Now there's still runway left. Like Kevin Lankinen unfortunately has
Casey
time to do.
DeSmith to me was a very good backup who floundered in the starter's role.
So seeing this over a long term,
Lankinen is showing me he's an NHL starter.
Yeah,
that he's one of the 32 best.
That he can handle the load and the pressure.
Correct.
No, it changes.
Now Tocchet and Torinius pushed him a little too far, and Rick had acknowledged that last week. I got to get him rest. Leaned on him a little too much, in part because Sheilofs has been so bankrupt this year. Columbus lost in Edmonton last night, so the Canucks get a tired team here. Of course.
3rd and 4, too.
The first game back off a long Eastern road trip, the sleep doctor taught us this many years ago, that can be one of the toughest ones, and Tocchet admitted we were sloppy in practice yesterday. First 20 minutes, quite sloppy. Of course, Quinn Hughes was held out of that practice. I'm sure most practices without Quinn Hughes look a little sloppier. And no optional skate this morning. You think he's really trying to keep Quinn away from the ice? Like, you think we know Hughes is playing through something, and you think that Tocchet is sort of administering things around Hughes to make sure that he's
Hughes and Hughes first for sure. But even secondarily, it was only the kids out on the ice. Paterson came on and shot a few pucks apparently for like 5 minutes and then left. It was just the kids. I think that Rick Tocchet has astutely seen the schedule as we have. I mean, this is not in-depth research here, but he's looked at the schedule as we have, seen no double days off through to the Christmas break, and said, this is going to be exhausting. The wear and tear is going to be crazy. I need to raise where the floor is of these guys right now by giving them the utmost in rest. So I think it's. I mean, who knows what a nice 36-hour rest is going to do for the long term, but you do what you can. And I think this was available to him. I would be surprised, like, if there's, I think, let's say there's 6 off days over the next couple of weeks, I'd be surprised if they practice more than half of those days. I would guess a lot of these days off between games are going to be just days off.
Max Sasson, Tocchet talked about, and they sent Lekramaki and McWard back down. More on that in a second, but Sasson stays here, and Tocchet said he liked his first 2 games, and he was contemplating leaving him at center here tonight. That's his natural position. Sasson had been playing the wing. They're even going to move Ratu over to accommodate this. Rick saying the key is sustainability, like with any young player. Okay, you've shown me some things. Now show me that you can consistently do it. He said he liked his pace. He twice mentioned Sasson's pace. He's a good skater.
I've been surprised by that too.
And he praised him for being pretty good, despite the fact he sits for long periods because the bench gets shortened a little bit and he's on the 4th line. He said now what he wants to see is the game slow down in Sasson's mind. Understanding when to burst, when not to, understanding angles. So we'll see what the youngster does.
We've seen
in the middle tonight, if in fact he's going to go through with this, and Jeff will learn us on that.
We've seen countless scouting reports of Sasson in the last 12 months since he popped onto the radar. I don't recall the praise of his skating necessarily. And I agree. I think he's a really strong skater.
Yep.
He gets more than just from A to B, and he turns tightly too, right? It's one thing to have speed, but if you take a while to get going, and when you stop it, he makes tight turns. He stops on pucks.
Short area quickness and agility are a big part of it as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of skating, JT Miller is skating. Tocchet confirmed. He said they have a plan for him. Saravelli thinks he's going to practice next Wednesday between games. And Rick was also talking about Ratu and Sasson and what they've given. And He name-checked his boy, Phil DiGiuseppe and Linus Karlsson, as potential call-ups later in the year. He's also praising Noah Juulsen and talked about how Noah Juulsen, of course, now has an opportunity because he's going to play a bunch of games in a row. Noah Juulsen is. And that was the role that he got moved into eventually last year, and that's when we saw the best of Noah Juulsen. Not when he was a game in, game out, seventh defenseman role, but when he had a chance to play a run of games. Okay, we got Jeff standing by. Tell us what neighborhood Yellow Dog are up to.
PDG's only played 2 games this year, by the way. He's got to get healthy before anything else happens. They want to tell you about the Starborn Kolsch. Boy, that's appropriate given the concert. Starborn Kolsch. The brew features 4 lucky furry friends from their famous Make My Pet a Yellow Dog Brewing Star contest. King Buddy, Gus, Yuka, and Winston were all co-winners of the contest. It's a collaborative fundraising contest with the BCSPCA. They raised over $220K. So everybody raised their Kolsch to Starborn and the beautiful pups supporting the BCSPCA. Congrats again to King Buddy, Gus, Yuka, and Winston. Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Oh, going Daryl Sutter on me. It's never good when Matt goes Daryl Sutter.
Yeah.
You okay?
Yeah, I think I might have missed out on it. Anyways.
Okay.
Let's bring in Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, the host of RinkWide Vancouver. He'll have a busy weekend with the game tonight against Columbus and Sunday's matinee against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Jeff's at Rogers Arena. How are you? Bracing for Taylor?
His one and only trip to Rogers Arena, by the way.
I came down early thinking that, again, I get the concert isn't until later tonight, but I just thought traffic and road closures, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm happy to report that it was easy to get to Rogers Arena. Now, getting out of here and later tonight, who knows? But I did make it down with plenty of time to spare. So, yes, no Taylor mania just yet in and around Rogers Arena / BC Place.
Pat's going to the concert, though, I hear.
She is, yeah. Lucked into some tickets. I guess she knew the system. She was set up all week, and she was getting tipped off that there were going to be tickets dropping last night, and she had 3 laptops set up on the coffee table and was working the system. And, yes, bouncing off the walls when she lucked into a pair of floor tickets for tonight. So
The glee.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you guys. All right.
So the big news, what do you think Demko's going to back up tonight, Jeff? We were saying, please don't get hurt, Kevin Lankinen. Not tonight. That would be a bad spot.
it is wild, guys. Like, if you're the backup, you are good to go. Like, that much we know, and you're one knock away. And we've seen it, and you guys documented some of the occurrences over the years in Canucks lore. I mean, this one absolutely would be right up there, and wouldn't that be something after all Thatcher Demko has been through if he was thrust into this game cold with no warm-up? It's a calculated risk. And look, he's had a bunch of practices here and clearly has come through them with flying colors to get to this point to be activated. Now, he does have to be activated from season-opening injured reserve. He's not on the roster at the moment, but will be before the end of the day. And the question is, do they send Artur Silovs down to Abbotsford, or do they keep three goalies around just to make sure that Thatcher gets through his role? I mean, he'll take warm-up after that. You presume he'll sit on the bench for the rest of the night. The way Rick talked about it, practice tomorrow here at Rogers Arena, and then there will be a discussion about a Sunday 1 o'clock start. And might we see Thatcher Demko get the start against the Tampa Lightning? Could it be Tuesday against the St. Louis Blues? Tampa, by the way, beat San Jose 8-1 last night and is the second highest scoring team in the National Hockey League. So on some levels, you'd think maybe the Tampa Lightning, not the ideal start for a guy like Thatcher Demko, who's been on mothballs for the better part of 9 months now. But it is the NHL, and even the weaker teams are still going to present a test and a challenge. But maybe that St. Louis game on Tuesday with a 7 o'clock conventional start time and a day to prepare. Who knows how it all shakes down. All we know is that Kevin Lankinen gets the start tonight, and Thatcher Demko's back in uniform, and that much represents a big victory for him personally and for the hockey club, because he means a ton. This is a guy that's been around for, in terms of tenure, he's been here longer than most and is respected in that locker room, and he's been around the team, but sort of at an arm's length and, doing his own thing, working out and rehabbing. But now he gets back in uniform, and so yeah, I mean, you guys played the clips. He was downplaying it a little bit, understated and reserved. I do think in the one clip, Blake, he mentioned that he was out of week to week and now it was day to day. And so that in his mind, that represented some progress here on the timeline. So whatever the case, we're going to see 35 back in a Canuck jersey for the warm-up at the very least. And I think for this night at least, it would be a good thing if we don't see him in game action facing live bullets.
No matter who's in net, they need to be better at home. And I didn't love the tone that I got from Tocchet's clip there talking about the home record and the fact that it's maybe in their head and a self-fulfilling prophecy to some degree. Of course, these skids don't get broken without you just winning. Like, the only cure to the losing at home is winning. What's your confidence that they can, pardon the pun here on this night, shake it off here and become a better home team?
I think they feel that they accomplished a fair bit out on this road trip, picking up 9 of a possible 12 points, and that they're coming home feeling better about themselves. A guy like Jake DeBrusk is riding an absolute heater right now. Now, a lot's been made about streaky Jake DeBrusk. It is time for him to score a goal here at Rogers Arena. Like, let's just get over it. It's December the 6th, 2 months into the season, all 11 of his goals. I can't imagine, guys, in NHL history that there have been many guys that have scored 11 goals, all of them on the road before they have scored a home goal. I just can't imagine. Goal scorers score at home and on the road. So you might get a fourth-line grinder that has a 4-goal season and they just happen to all come on the road. But Jake DeBrusk's the goal scorer. And so it is a bit of an outlier. It has to happen for him here. And back to your point, like, yes, if their best players just played a little bit better at home, I think they would stand a much better chance. Elias Pettersson's the only guy on this team that has more than 3 goals on home ice. They've played 11 games. Like, they've played a quarter of their home ice schedule here. So power play was good on the road trip, and hopefully they can sort of bring that home with them. A couple of power play goals here or there. And, guys, we should mention that this was sort of the storyline going into Detroit last Sunday, was the Red Wings could not kill penalties. And then the Canucks got that 5-on-3, and they cashed in on both ends of it. The Columbus Blue Jackets have given up a power play goal in 11 straight games, according to their own game notes. There hasn't been a streak like this in the NHL in 20 years. So,
wow.
They gave up 2 against the Oilers last night. If the Canucks get power plays, they have to cash in. It's as simple as that. On this 11-game stretch, Columbus killing penalties at 60%. So it really has been an issue for Dean Evison and his hockey club. And they were playing well before they embarked out on this road trip, but they were shut out in Calgary the other night, got beaten handily, outplayed. McDavid had 4 assists, and the Oilers did a number on Columbus. So Columbus comes in having dropped a couple of games, and it just feels like, yes, the time is right for the Vancouver Canucks to put the home woes behind them. I suppose if we boil it right down, like the marquee out front of Rogers Arena could say, it's the 3 home ice win Vancouver Canucks against the 3 road win Columbus Blue Jackets. That's your matchup. Something's got to give here tonight.
Somebody's got to win the hockey game, right? That's the way this works. Somebody wins this hockey.
Mm-hmm. Have we talked about Sasson?
No. Feel free.
Jeff, he's liked Sasson so much he's going to give the kid a chance to play center tonight. Is that still accurate?
Yeah, Rick Tocchet hinted at that again this morning after mentioning it yesterday, and I think it makes sense. Like, Max Sasson's been a center in Abbotsford. They brought him in and they wanted to get him in the lineup, and really the only spot for him to make his debut was on the wing. It's, I think, easier to break into the National Hockey League over on the wing, fewer responsibilities, and so he acquitted himself nicely, had the assist in his NHL debut, and we all saw the scenes of Dad and the rest of the family, and then again, the numbers multiplied when they went home to Michigan for the game in Detroit on Sunday. I think like a lot of guys, and we saw this with Lekermacki as well, shot out of a cannon, you get that adrenaline pumping for your NHL debut, you get a couple of good games, and then it starts to taper off, and I think there was some of that with Max Sasson. That's a lot of hockey. I mean, he played 5 games in 7 or 8 nights there at the NHL level, so quite a test for him all out on the road. This will be a big deal, I'm sure, for him getting a chance to play a game at Rogers Arena for the first time in his National Hockey League career. So he's going to get the center ice assignment. The other part of that is that Atu Ratu, by all accounts, played some of his best hockey last year down the stretch in Abbotsford on the wing, and I think the Canucks want to investigate this and see what they've got. If they need him to step in and take a faceoff, we know that that's one of the areas that he can contribute. But for tonight, he's going to line up on the wing, And I am curious to see, because I haven't seen Aatu Räty at the National Hockey League level, even training camp in the preseason. They had him down the middle. And remember, he opened the season, and P.S. Suter was injured for a game there. Like, Aatu Räty made this team as one of their 4 centers. Obviously, there's been some moving parts, but through it all, he's remained pretty much a constant. But now he's going to slide to the wing. So I'm kind of curious what Sasson looks like handling the responsibilities of a center in the National Hockey League, but what does Aatu Räty bring to the mix moving over to the wing?
It's a worthwhile experiment. You want to build center depth, and you want to do that for the purposes of your own team, but also for trade assets down the road as well. You can ballyhoo a guy as a guy that can play down the middle. That doesn't hurt. So on the trade front, Nils Höglander remains a Vancouver Canuck, starting to play better, just as maybe some of these trade rumors are starting to pick up a little bit more steam here. At home, how do you think the usage of Nils Höglander is going to look tonight?
Well, he's going to start in a third-line capacity. We know that how you start and how you finish under Rick Tocchet can be 2 totally different things, and Höglander's lived it. 6 minutes of ice time in Buffalo, got a little bit more in the Detroit game, although he was on the ice. He took that offensive zone penalty and then was on the ice for a couple of goals against the Red Wings. I thought he had some jump in Minnesota at the end of the trip, drew a penalty that led to the Quinn Hughes power play goal, had a couple of shots on goal. The goal drought has gone on way too long for a guy that scored as often as he did last season, but I almost put that aside. Like, I just want to see the high-energy Nils Höglander impacting games the way that he can. Goals, look, you can get shots. Goalies are going to make saves. There's no guarantee that pucks are going to go in the net for you, but he can control his work rate, the hustle, the determination, eliminate the offensive zone penalties, and don't make the mistakes defensively that are going to limit your ice time. So hopefully Höglander can build off the game in Minnesota. I know you guys talked about it. Start to finish, they lose the hockey game in overtime, but they had their chances. One of their better efforts, I think. So I know we won't start the moral victory conversation again, but I do think that a guy like Höglander was part of that, that it was something to build on against a good Minnesota hockey club. I noticed him for the right reasons, and that just hasn't happened nearly enough through the first 24 games this season.
Who gets the bigger round of applause, Nils Höglander for a goal or Dakota Joshua?
It's Joshua.
It's
Joshua.
I've seen 2 Nils Höglander goals this year. Still waiting to see a Dakota Joshua goal, and he played 15 minutes against Minnie at the end of the trip. And when I talked about the grueling, taxing portion of the schedule for a guy like Max Sasson, you can only imagine that it's that much more so for a player like Dakota Joshua coming through what he has and without the benefit of a training camp and a preseason. So, on the fitness level, he was one of the guys that came out, took the morning skate here. I still think that there are levels to get to be at the top of his game. There have been some moments along the way. What astounds me through all this, it's 10 games. So, it's kind of a nice benchmark, nice round number to step back and, all right, what have we seen from him? Just 2 assists, but only 2 shots on goal, which surprises me for a guy that can get to the front of the net, bang away at loose pucks and rebounds. So he really hasn't been a threat to score a goal. And I think if you asked him, and I haven't had a chance because they've been out on the road here, but I think he would tell you that even if he had tempered expectations in his return, that it's been a little slower than he had hoped for. He waited, kind of like Demko. Like, we thought he was going to be ready, and he took a little extra time because he said, when I get back there, I want to be able to make an impact. Well, that hasn't happened yet, but the team's winning hockey games, and so that buys him time to continue to find his game. And ultimately for Dakota Joshua, it's not about what does he look like on the 6th of December. It's hitting his stride for the second half of the season and then ultimately the playoffs as well. So I still think you give this guy all the latitude in the world given what he has been through. But 10 games in, it's been a little bit underwhelming.
I'll never understand how important camp is. Camp has gotten shorter and shorter. We see it time and time again. The player that misses camp for contract or health reasons.
Well, camp and preseason.
Sets them so far back.
I know.
It's crazy.
Lastly, Jeff, you might be the single biggest hockey fan I know. In fact, you may like hockey more than anyone I know likes anything. With the exception of perhaps my better half and Taylor Swift. And by the way, baby, if you're watching, start planning the outfit. 4 lower bowl tickets tonight to the Canucks and Blue Jackets, or 2 upper bowls to Taylor Swift, Jeff. We're giving them to you free. No resale. Where are you going tonight?
Oh, I'm working. I've got RinkWide, so I'm unfortunately that was part of the problem. Is when my wife got these tickets and I couldn't go, and she said to me, she said, "Do you have to host RinkWide?" I was like, "It's game day. Like I'm not like." We're a pretty small group. It's not like there's a bunch of hosts just hanging around waiting on Friday night to host RinkWide.
Matt, we have our answer.
We have Jeff. Say no more. Sweet Prince.
No. I would be all over a Taylor Swift concert. Now, my wife and daughter saw the show in Seattle last summer.
Remember that.
So I got the full report then. But like this is one of the great sort of cultural weekends in our city in a long, long time. And I think the people watching would be amazing. The vibe and the atmosphere sounds like it's incredible. I talked to people that were in Toronto a couple of weeks back that went and saw the show. We've had Taylor Swift on in our house and in our cars for years. And so am I a Swiftie? I don't know, but I certainly know a lot of her music. And I just think it sounds like she puts on one hell of a show. Like the work rate for 3.5 hours, like my goodness. So I got all the respect in the world for Taylor Swift and what she has accomplished, and as a songwriter and an artist and everything else. I would love to have gone to one of the shows this weekend. Alas, I don't think it's going to happen.
When this all started, Carmen's like, "Well, you're coming with me, right?" And I went, "No, not at those prices. I'd like to see it too." In fact, I've watched the Eras tour with her. Looks like an incredible show. Well, that ain't worth this kind of money for me.
It's a lot.
You know, plus, send her to the show tonight. Then I get to go spend a lot of money on a football game that she doesn't care about at some point.
Guilt-free, yes.
Amazing stuff, Jeff. Thank you for stick handling everything down at the rink and the traffic and the events. Events of this weekend. We'll be listening to RinkWide. I will catch up with you on Monday.
Do not cross Granville this evening.
Absolutely, yes. Jeff. We want you here, hunkered down at the Wall Center, lest anything happens. All the balloons, all the party streamers are being set up upstairs in the lobby as we speak. So make sure to get a photo.
We'll be listening.
That's as close as I'm going to get to
yeah, that's
show,
right.
so.
The cardboard cutout of Taylor upstairs here in the lobby level
right, guys.
of the North
Have
Tower.
a great weekend.
See you well, Jeff. Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, also the host of RinkWide Vancouver. He sent me a text last night asking about parking here as the garage filled up. I said, "Jeff, so far so good this morning. So far so good. But check-in time is what, 3 o'clock here? Going to be busy.
It's going to be busy.
Going to be busy.
Yeah.
Update on something we told you about yesterday with the Canucks roster moves and it being the intent of it being to maximize LTIR space. Well, our friend Hart Levine of Puckpedia has educated us even more here. So the Canucks calling up Lekramaki and McWard and then putting Filip Hronek on LTIR was designed to obtain as close to an optimal LTIR capture as possible. We told you that they can now exceed the salary cap by everything up to Filip Hronek's salary minus $8,000. So small change. So $7.542 million. So as soon as they saw, okay, here's an opportunity to put a guy on LTIR, and now that sets our number whereby we can go over and above the cap by 492. 492. So just $8,000 shy of Hronek's salary. Then they called up Sasson, which cut into some of that space. But as Levine and Puckpedia notes, by sending a player down, they can now start to accrue cap space again, and they have sent Lekramaki and Cole McWard down. I mentioned this Trouba deal, but wow, that is quite hardcore from the New York Rangers with your captain to basically tell him, look, you're being scratched, and we're either trading you and putting you on waivers. Columbus and some other teams were involved there. Ottawa, Detroit were rumored, but alas, it's the Anaheim Ducks for a one-time first-round pick in Vaakanainen, the big Finnish defenseman, and a fourth-round pick. Anaheim had a couple of those in 2025.
By the way, Big Head Hockey had every active player who's been traded as a captain. It's a pretty long list. The captains get traded. Enough of this. They don't get traded. Horvat, Giroux, Erik Karlsson, Ryan O'Reilly, Kyle Oposo, Ryan McDonough, Mark Giordano, Nick Foligno, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. All traded as captains.
Yeah.
So,
and speaking of trades, Saravelli said that Höglander was the piece that the Canucks were talking to the Blue Jackets about for David Jiricek, which completely tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I hear that. I hear some of this. It's going to take Höglander plus to get Marcus Pettersson. Hard pass. Hard pass. Rental defenseman in the 4-5 vein. Not a great puck mover. $4 million cap hit. I realize you're comfortable with him. You know him from Pittsburgh. But I think that would be foolhardy. I supported the acquisitions of the two rental players they got last year in part because Zadorov was so required to this blue line. Not that a defenseman isn't required this year. And in Lindholm's case, because you were talking about arguably the best rental that was going to be on the market, Lindholm, Gensel. Not to mention the fact that they needed another center last year. The center depth wasn't quite what it is this year, right? Prior to the Lindholm trade. But if it's going to cost me a roster player who's cheap this year is cheap over the next few years, at least we think he's going to be cheap. He's not producing at a $3 million level, but I think he'll get back somewhat. I'm not going there. I think you can find a better rental defenseman if it's going to cost you Nils Höglander, like a pure second pair guy. And lastly, Zane Parekh, the 9th overall pick, the Calgary first rounder from the last draft, is now getting invited to the Canadian World Junior Camp. This because the 44th overall pick in that draft, Harrison Brunicki, a Pittsburgh defenseman, draftee, is not going to be able to contend for a roster spot physically, and so Parekh gets the call.
It's a great possibility for a story. Again, he hasn't made the team, folks. It's just the camp. But imagine
he'd being tough to make the team, given that they left him off. But there's some that think he should just be the power play quarterback of the Canadian team. That this was completely foolish to leave this guy. And so again, it's now Bennett Seneke, the 3rd overall pick, and Carter Yekemchuk, the 7th overall pick, who are on the outside of this camp looking in because Iginla and Lindstrom, the other 2 top 10 picks, are hurt.
Like any team, you consider the opinion of your coach, but really the Hockey Canada brass is in charge of the camp roster. The coaches then make the decision based on what they see. So he might be the last guy to make the camp, Zane Parekh, but the coach might see him and go, "No, that's my guy. I got a lot of use for."
I remember 2009 in Ottawa, and they kept Ryan Ellis, who at the time was a double underager, if I'm not mistaken, was 17. And I can remember we were in the hallway. Pat Quinn was the coach. We were in the hallway. There were some Hockey Canada people there. We said, "You guys kept this, small, undersized, right shot 17-year-old." And somebody said to us, "Wait till you see him run a power play." And boy, were they right. Yeah. And you have the luxury of the bigger bench in the World Juniors that you can say to Parekh, if you're not comfortable with him playing a 5-on-5 shift, and I don't know why you wouldn't be against a lot of the smaller countries. Maybe there's 1 or 2 opponents you want to shelter him. You just say, kid, you're going to run our power play.
For those that forget, 7 defensemen dress, that's 13 forwards dress for every game.
And we were wondering if we were all out of Canucks prospects going to the World Juniors, or at least the World Juniors camps. Tom Höglander in Sweden.
A touch of basil makes everything better.
Is it basil or is it basil? Sensenens, a 7th-round pick last year, the 221st player taken overall. He is going to the Swiss World Junior Camp. He apparently plays on Rimouski's top pair in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, albeit in a shutdown role, just the 3 assists in 23 games for him in his CHL debut. Time now to get to our menu. It's brought to you by Greta Bar, a fantastic spot to pregame or pre-concert, as the case may be. It is steps from the arena and stadium. We're going to be there for some Canucks Army viewing parties later in the year. They got the street food menu. It appeals to teenage girls, I would think. And games in the arcade, that would appeal to a younger crowd as well. Weekly drink specials. Greta, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Greta Bar, let the games begin. We just had Jeff. We will talk to the other Jeff, Marek, who began his show this week on the Nation Network, The Sheet, each and every day, also at noon Pacific. Jeff's going to catch us up on what he's hearing on Nils Höglander. We also talk about Marcus Paterson, the Four Nations rosters and tournament with Jeff, plus the return of the Great Clips Mailbag segment. We call it To the People We Go. That's later in the program. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. I was a winner with the over on Thursday Night Football. Blake
I was a winner,
was
too.
also a winner with the
Tage Thompson goal.
Tage Thompson goal for Buffalo. But a loser on the football game. You were laying 3.5.
Lost
Missed
it by a half
that much.
point.
And the line went down to 3-2, Blake, before kickoff. I'll retain the honor. Jake DeBrusk, he's on a heater. Liz Pedersen's been playing great hockey for a month now. I like Besser's chances of getting a goal tonight, playing alongside them. Doesn't have one in his 5 games since returning from injury. He's due. He's plus 135 to score. I know he got burnt on this earlier in the week. Every game that passes that Brock doesn't score, to me, brings him closer to one. Plus 135 for Besser to score tonight against CBJ.
I was looking for similar storylines. I was looking for that Jake DeBrusk home goal, but it's plus 155. I think I can do better than that. The anomaly here is to 2 points. Quinn Hughes is not much value there at 145. But Pedersen, considering how many points he's been racking up lately, the multi-point games that Pedersen's been having lately, 2 points for Pedersen, plus 230. Yes, please, I'll take it.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets, so whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Jeff Marek coming up next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
Secure some price from the historic Wall Center and hours remaining, Blake, in the Black Friday sale.
Run, don't walk, as they say, folks. We gave you plenty of warning. You should know better than to be a last-minute shopper. I've done none, by the way. Go to nationgear.ca. The last day of the Black Friday sale, whether it's the classics, the new My City collection. I don't know if the sheet has merch yet. We've asked Jeff.
We will.
When he brings them on. But all the other shows do have merch there, including this one. We've received your emails, folks. So, hey, I want to buy your. Do it now. Go to nationgear.ca.
Shout out Tim on Twitter, and I told her if I manage to get her to Taylor Swift tonight, that is Christmas, that is her birthday, that is Valentine's Day all wrapped up.
And some
in one, yes.
Spend over $200 free shipping.
Jeff Marek of The Sheet. It debuted on Monday. He joins us from his new studio. How you doing, fella? Congratulations.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Blake. No merch. They don't give me much promotion around here.
My God. I think I've got merch. I
do like the S&P hats. Like put me down for one of those. Those are sharp, man. Those look good. Yes, thank you very much. How's it go? Pretty quiet Friday, boys.
The week has been crazy here. I don't know if you've been keeping track of Canucks land. It's been a newsy week.
He has, because he's done some digging on Nils Höglander. What do you know there, Mr. Marek?
Well, I mean, listen, I think Elliot put out the report that the Pittsburgh Penguins are interested, which does fit, sort of the MO of how Kyle Dubas is trying to do not a tear down rebuild, but a rebuild on the fly. Like the one thing about Dubas, and you look historically, even going back to when he ran the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds of the OHL, Dubas is a big second chance guy, and hiring Sheldon Keefe in Sault Ste. Marie was very much a second chance move. And it seems as if the way that they're trying to do this in Pittsburgh, and I keep trying to repeat to people, no, this is the rebuild. This is just not a tear it down all the way to the nuts and bolts rebuild. Discuss amongst yourselves whether you think that can ever work, or the more salient way to do it is to strip it all down. But he's looking for players in their mid-20s, and you see Cody Glass and you see Philip Tomasino. He's looking for guys that need the change of scenery, and hoping that he can hit on a couple here as he tries to redevelop the Pittsburgh Penguins. So it shouldn't necessarily be a surprise that Nils Höglander's name gets attached to the Pittsburgh Penguins. I did talk to one team today about Höglander who had, I don't know, kick tires is probably the best way to put it. And this person said to me that the one thing that gave them much cause for pause was quite simply the contract. And the new deal hasn't even kicked in yet. And the contract was made back, this was made in October, coming off a shooting percentage pretty close to 1 million. And now he's not shooting 1 million anymore. And the one thing that gave, this group a lot of reason for pause here was the 3x3, which starts next season for Höglander.
Which in a couple of years' time, Jeff, I mean, with the inflationary effect here of the cap eventually going up, I mean, I would think 3 million looks pretty good, ages pretty well. Like we've been seeing this for the last 12 months here. But we've got to readjust what numbers mean under the cap here with this cap going up every year now.
I do understand that, but there is still are you of the belief that, because I am, that you never make mistakes necessarily when you overpay the big boys on your team, but you get in trouble the further down the lineup you go. Sure. I do understand that. And I understand your point, and it's the correct one. All of us don't necessarily look at the number, look at the salary cap percentage.
Yeah.
I understand that. And players love to hear that one. And general managers don't, because they like to have their artificial ceilings based on players that signed contracts 3 years ago. And no one's going higher than Nathan McKinnon, et cetera, et cetera. Well, just look at percentages. Don't look at the actual number. But I think, and I'm just drawing one example from one team. That it was the contract that scared them away more than anything else.
Marcus Paterson is firmly on the block in Pittsburgh. Yeah. Höglander for Paterson, is that a fair deal? Who says no on that?
Listen, there's a $1 million difference in salary. Of course, there's difference in term there. It's not as if, look, just to be blunt, it's not as if the Vancouver Canucks haven't had interest in Marcus Paterson before. I mean, going back a few years when it was Ron Hextall as a general manager, there were some conversations and discussions that revolved around Marcus Paterson. One of those players that both Rutherford and Alvin liked, and we suspect still like as well. So I think maybe if this one happens, we can sort of chalk this one up to maybe one of the worst kept secrets around the NHL, the Vancouver Canucks and Jim Rutherford's attraction to Marcus Paterson. Look, Marcus Paterson's on an expiring deal. Marcus Paterson is a very safe, reliable defenseman who can be a little bit snarly at times, can make a real good first pass, can move the puck out of your zone. And for any team that wants to do anything in the playoffs, as you guys well know, you can never have enough defensemen that can move the puck. This one makes sense to me about 1,000,000%. But I've been saying that about Paterson now for 2 going on maybe 3 years.
It's a weird trade market right now in that there seems to be more chatter, but are we anywhere closer to actual consummation of deals here?
It's a great question. So in one sense, you know what kind of complicates everything here? The Four Nations tournament. The Four Nations tournament kind of, for some teams, and I know one team specifically that doesn't want to make a big move until the Four Nations tournament is done and their players come back healthy. I mean, we can have the 2006 Dominic Hasek conversation about the Ottawa Senators and what happened there, and how I think we can all remember, the Ottawa Senators essentially just even begging Hasek just to try to go on the ice to see how he can play. And you can make the argument, I think rightfully so, that probably cost the Ottawa Senators a cup. And that's why the Ottawa Senators of that, the best teams to never win the Stanley Cup. They were that good. I think complicating things a little bit might be the Four Nations, because you don't want to make too big a deal, completely restructure your team, and then bam, a key player is out of the lineup for the remainder of the season. Like, I think one of the nightmares that the Winnipeg Jets are probably looking at here is, the thought, like, hey, it's great. Our guy's in net for Team USA. That's awesome. He's got the respect of the NHL world. This is tremendous. Internationally, he's being recognized. If Connor Hellebuyck gets hurt, like, absolutely, like, what an absolute disaster for the Winnipeg Jets. Or if you're a team like the Dallas Stars. So Dallas is going to go big game hunting this year. Like, this is going to be a very much an all-in season for the Dallas Stars. But should the Dallas Stars make any major, team changing moves before they know that Jake Ottinger's through the Four Nations unscathed? Maybe I'm putting too much into this, but I've had more than a couple of people mention this to me in the past couple of days that I do think that it is at least one of the concerns that's out there right now.
Well, there's two facets to that. You go to the Four Nations and a key member of your team gets injured, and that sewers your chances, like your goalie going down. Or you trade for a guy now, that guy is in the Four Nations, and he gets injured, and you've given up a ton of assets to get that guy, and you don't even have that player. So there's a couple different ways where that could really sewer you. So
we never really considered this before. We just like, Four Nations, this is awesome. Replace All-Star competitive games. This is going to be great. Whereas managers are saying, it's good as long as my guys come back healthy. You're 100%
so
right.
The lesson is you trade for a Russian, a Czech guy, or Andrzej Kopitar.
That's right. German, go for it. Anyone? You're good to go. Trade for those guys. Are going to be in Cabo for the week and a half.
And just so people, Dominik Hasek was 28-10-4 with a 209 goals against and a 925 save percentage for the best team in the NHL.
Yeah.
When his groin went pop at the Torino Olympics. I was telling you,
it's like 5 minutes into him being on the ice too, wasn't it, Matt? Like you were in Ottawa then, right?
I was in the Ottawa Citizen newsroom. The game was on every television, and the groan that shot through that place when the groin went, it was quite a turn for the worse. The Canucks having life without JT Miller, Thatcher Demko, and Philip Hronek here, Jeff. What have you made of them? Minus these three big stars, and the winning continues.
Listen. First of all, Kevin Lankinen, bravo. And listen, I'm gonna butcher a quote here, which I believe was turn of the century, the Bertrand Russell, British philosopher, where he said something along the lines of, "You can legitimately ask a man to walk on a tightrope for 20 minutes, but you can't expect him to walk on a tightrope for 20 years." You can expect the team to do well short term with some adversity and some injuries and walk that tightrope for a little while. You just can't expect teams to excel when the injuries are longer than essentially 20 minutes. Anyway, we all have our fingers crossed for JT Miller and hope that he's fine and comes back healthy. And a healthy JT Miller is one of the best players in the league, full stop. And the good news looks better and better every day about Thatcher Demko. Now I'm using about being able to back up, and that's great. Hronek is such a rock on the blue line for the Vancouver Canucks. I'm telling you this when you're there to document every practice at every game. Again, you can do it short term. I just don't like the idea of doing it long term, but so far, given that expectations would need to be lowered when these players are out of the lineup, I think Vancouver's played well. I really do.
And
helps that Hughes is amazing, by the way. Helps that Hughes is like on a completely different planet right now.
Well, I don't know if you noticed too, back-to-back days with him away from the practice sheet, and Rick Tocchet saying that was his idea to chase him away yesterday, leads you to believe that this has been a burden here on Quinn Hughes keeping this team afloat.
But that's it, right? Like, that's what superstar players do. And this is just a sort of another sort of feather in the cap of Quinn Hughes. Look, I know when I start talking about Quinn Hughes, I'm like, one sentence away from saying he invented oxygen. But like, honestly, like, what more can, I think a couple of times ago when we were speaking, we started talking about, how all of a sudden now he's a shooting threat as well. Like, he just keeps getting more and more bullets in the chamber for himself here. It's turning in another command performance. I mean, is it heavy lifting? Yeah, it's heavy lifting, but so far so good for Quinn Hughes.
Well, for us, it's more evidence of a Hart candidacy that seems to be nowhere past the BC border here at this point. But
just give it time. Just give it time. That's all. Just like, honestly, like, we're not at Christmas yet. Just give it time. Like, seriously, like, people will pay attention. People are watching.
especially with these injuries. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, this is the kind of stuff where which brings up Kirill Kaprizov, who we just saw. Great season.
Yeah.
Can a winger legitimately win the Hart in your mind?
The winger question for trophies has always been Selke for me, and I think for a lot of people, Yuri Lettinen being the last to win the Selke. But why not? I know that wingers kind of get knocked because you don't have the same defensive responsibilities that a center does. So right away you're getting the short end of the stick. But even just swinging it over to the Selke for 1 second, I think one of the crimes of the last generation as far as trophies go was that a player like Marian Hossa never won the Selke. Or even if you want to swing it to the middle like Mikko Koivu, I'll throw his name out there too. I think a winger can. I think it's harder for a winger to win the Hart Trophy unless your name is Ovechkin and you're snapping in 60 goals. But I think it all sort of, put it this way, you have to do more than a center would to get that attention. But if anyone's done that, it's Kirill Kaprizov. Now, I still don't know, and I know here we are December 6th having this conversation. I still don't know how long Minnesota can do this. If they can do this, this is one of the great, if they can win the Central, okay? If they can win the Central, this is one of the great achievements that we've seen in the past few years, because I don't know many teams that could tie a skate behind their back with a $14 million cap hole deliberately, because everything
they've
is
been competitive throughout. They've been competitive from the moment they bought those guys out. They've remained relatively competitive. It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's also been awful because it's got them in that mushy middle part.
Yeah.
Right. What's the old Sam Kinison line? If you're gonna miss heaven, don't miss it by 2 inches. If you're gonna miss, really miss, because there's a reward for making heaven, and there's a reward for being a totally opposite and farthest away from heaven. You can either get a first roll draft pick, or you can win a Stanley Cup. Being anywhere in the middle is tough for you. But I'm with you. Good on them. Good on what Bill Guerin's been able to put together here. I just don't know how long Minnie can do this without any reinforcements and without any new bodies. It's, to me, this is one of the great stories in the NHL. No one really saw this one coming. I don't think anyone said Minnie. No. I don't think Minnie said, look, Minnesota for the playoffs, let alone top of the division.
Some of us were bullish on their playoff chances, but yes, top of the division is another thing. I'm not a spiritual man, but I have a feeling that Sam took the elevator going south.
I think it was probably right there.
Kucherov in 2019, the last winger to win the Hart Trophy. It's been 5 centermen since. In fact, it was Kucherov, Hall, and Kane. 3 of 4 years a winger won the Hart Trophy, and then I
think Pasta could do it too. He drives play from the wing too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just more difficult to get the attention. That's all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I gotta say, Four Nations appetite seems a little muted here in Vancouver for this tournament. No Canucks on Team Canada. Besser and Demko now not going to play on Team USA. I think Canucks fans want their players rested for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Yeah. But it also may be that we're an Olympic city that saw one of the great hockey games ever played for an Olympic gold medal, right? So I think there's a lot of factors working into it. What's your sense of enthusiasm around the league, around the country for Four Nations?
So you're telling me that Vancouver Canucks fans, or any hockey fans for that matter, if this ends up being Canada and USA, that there's not going to be an excitement in every single hockey market for this?
I think there will be excitement. I don't think you're going to have people pouring into and pouring out of bars like we saw for the gold medal game in
no chance.
2002 or 2010 or even
no way.
Sochi was at a very odd hour here.
Like Canada, Finland, does that catch your attention en route to the game that you're talking about? I don't know that it does.
Am I a bad person if I'm rooting for a Sweden-Finland final? Because we're all just assuming
you're
it's
a bad
be
Canadian.
Canada, USA.
You can hand in your passport at the nearest Customs and Borders office, sir.
Hang on. So I was talking to Rhett Warner about this yesterday. How about your thoughts on this one? I always think about 1996 when I see Canada USA playing, because those 3 games in the final were fantastic. Canada wins in Philly, and then USA wins 2 games in Montreal. That third game where they punched, like, was it 4 goals in 3 minutes to win, was just, and then Dave Stubbs in the Gazette had the great headline, "Whoa, Canada." And we saw fights in those games. Like, we saw Guerin, Primo, Tkachuk, Lemieux, like, gloves down, gloves off, stick down. They challenged the Chiefs. Do you think it's beyond the pale to think of Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk, even though they're on the same team, going for it in this one? You know what happens when these guys pull the sweater over their shoulders.
I would put nothing past either Tkachuk brother.
Yeah.
But I would be surprised if you see fights and nastiness.
For an Olympic medal, the answer is yes. For this,
well, except for the Olympics, you fight. It's hard. It's
it's a little. See, I could see it more in this
penalty.
one, where it's still a big tournament. The emotions are high, but I mean, you know what happens when you fight in the Olympics and that stage and that medal, etc. I don't know. I could see it. I really could. Much to the chagrin of Florida Panthers fans, I suppose.
Hey,
but that's one that for whatever reason I just wonder about.
We were talking about the Canada roster, and a cynic would say they have not learned the Rob Zamner lesson here in terms of who they brought. A tactician might say, no, they brought some defensive-minded players like Bennett, like Sanheim, like Colton Parayko, because they see the firepower on the other side and they also see their own crease.
Yep.
And are looking to patch the vulnerability as best as possible.
Just as an aside, before I get to that, am I the only one that feels bad for Rob Zamner?
I feel bad for him too, and I feel bad every time I bring him up.
Nothing that he's done, because I've done it too, Matt. Like, I've done it too. Rob Zamner, like, I've done it, but it's like he's held up as like
outlier. Like,
I know,
how
come? Okay,
Shane Corson.
Let me give you another one.
Zamner never had more than 50 points in a season. He never had more than 19 goals in a season.
But the thing is, like, if you look historically, like 1987 was, for a lot of people, myself included, the best hockey we ever saw. Like that Canada Cup. If Canada would have lost that game at Copps Coliseum, the 6-5 game with the Howard Chuck hook and Gretzky to Lemieux and all that, and Larry Murphy, the great decoy, where he's never getting the puck, but he's the greatest decoy of all time. Larry Murphy's going to that post, but no one thinks he's getting that puck from Lemieux. Do you remember that? Remember anyone ever have a conversation about Normand Rochefort? When's the last time either of you guys had a conversation about Normand Rochefort?
I'm not sure I've had a single
Normand Rochefort was on that team.
Was he
really? Normand Rochefort was on that team. Was it a Serge Savard pick? Who knows? Maybe, you know how the politics of all these things play out. But again, it's only an issue if you lose. Right? It's only.
Rochefort was a defensive. Yeah. So
I'll say, see, no one's ever mentioned Normand Rochefort. Where did he come from?
Yeah. But like, Dan Hamhuis was on the Sochi team. Like, we know Dan, we love Dan. Yeah. Dan was never going to put up points. Dan was a hell of a defenseman.
Yeah.
So I can abide that. It's when you go up front and take a purely defensive player or a mostly defensive player. And first of all, before we get any further, let me correct you, Mr. Merrick. Blake is from Winnipeg, so there was no Howard Chuck hook.
Yeah, I was going to take
the damn face-off, okay, Merrick? Clean. If he doesn't win that draw.
Okay. One of the great, because Howard Chuck's one of my favorite players. And that's why I love Cole Perfetti, because he was the Howard Chuck pick for Winnipeg. His mom making the pick, I always have an emotional attachment because I knew the family and I got to know Dale pretty well when he coached Barrie. But when you look at that moment for that draw, I've always put myself in Dale Howard Chuck's place there, because do you remember who Mike Keenan pulled out of the faceoff circle to put Dale Howard Chuck in?
Who
was it?
Mark Messier.
Oh wow!
So you're Dale Howard Chuck and you're skating to the dot, saying, "Yeah, I'm taking the face-off, Moose." Coach, what was that? I never got a chance to ask Dale that one, but what was like that moment like when he skated to the face and had to pull Mark Messier out of the dot?
Well, and the idea that Gretzky and Lemieux were just like, no, you take it, right? You know that in and of itself, let alone that you're coming on for.
Trust me. In 1987 in Winnipeg, that was a pretty prideful moment. The fact that he was on that team, the fact that he was playing with those guys. I had that poster up pretty damn quick in my bedroom.
Do you have a comment on the hook, Mr. Price?
Yeah,
What hook?
No hook.
There is no hook.
No hook.
Marvelous stuff. Congrats on your first week. Welcome to the family. We're delighted to have you aboard and look forward to all these Friday conversations going forward.
S&P hat. Let's go, boys.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
So Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where you turn game night into a game weekend. Like tonight, book your stay at the Wall. Enjoy an exclusive Harrison Price rate. Call 604-331-1000. Mention the S&P exclusive rate. I'm going to guess it's not available tonight.
I'm guessing nothing is available tonight.
I've seen enough activity in the hotel lobby here today that maybe pick another Friday. But do this. Some Black Update supply based on availability. Narrator's voice. There is no availability.
Seems to be a lot of families with young daughters at the hotel.
A lot of estrogen downtown today, Vancouver. You can text us 778-402-9680. Email live at scarsonprice.com. It all goes to the Great Clips inbox, and that's what we're doing right here, right now. That's why you text. That's why you email. It's time now for To the People We Go, brought to you by Great Clips. What are the people saying this week?
Omar kicking it old school. Into the inbox he goes. Tell me I'm wrong. As evidenced by last year's playoff run and this recent road trip, this Canucks team gets its motivation through adversity.
Yeah.
The question remains, can they put it together when all hands are on deck?
I'm going to tell Omar he's right. That's a really sage comment, Omar. Very heads up on your part. And because I think that's one of the things that Rick Tocchet has tried to instill in this group. So, yeah, doing as well as they did last year in the playoffs on a third-string goalie, doing as well as they have through the first 2 months of this season without Thatcher Demko, the road trip without JT Miller,
But Brock Besser,
the 2 games without Philip Roenick.
3 weeks without Brock Besser.
Yeah. No, that's
and again,
I should say 3 games without Philip Roenick.
And not that Derek Forbort is a Norris Trophy winner, but they went out and signed that guy to be defensive depth. He's been gone the whole year. He's played 4 games. So the reason why you bring in defensive depth is so when guys like Roenick go down and stuff like that, everybody rises up and you've got the depth. He hasn't been available to them. So it's been everywhere.
Well done.
Dakota Joshua, too. Adam, on JT Miller. How can the Canucks, on JT Miller rumors, trade rumors, how can the Canucks materially improve on JT? I don't think they can. Certainly not with anyone on New York. This has been my problem with the JT Miller trade from a Canucks perspective is the Canucks are in win-now mode, much the same as the New York Rangers want to be. Why would you trade away a player that materially improves you better than anybody on the Rangers really does, outside of maybe Fox and Miller?
I was going to say, on a one-for-one deal, you can't unless Adam Fox does more for your defense than JT Miller would do for your offense, but that's pie in the sky because Adam Fox.
There's zero chance from a Rangers perspective.
They're trading him. The other answer would be if you get multiple pieces for JT Miller. And there is an old hockey adage that the best player in the trade, that's who wins it.
Yeah.
I think that's outdated because that predates the salary cap world where you only have X number of dollars to fill your roster out. So if you want me to play it out, let's say it's Tocchet or Hedel, let's say it's K'Andre Miller, let's say it's a third piece. And then all of a sudden you have filled more holes in your roster and the sum of the parts equates to more than what JT Miller gives you. Again, risky move, very unlikely move because the Rangers are trying to win as well. But theoretically, it is possible.
Yeah, you have to think about it from a Ranger perspective as well. Do they feel like they get better? And those are 2 big pieces of their team. Say Tocchet and Miller, even Hedel and Miller. 2 big pieces. For one other piece, like does he change the chemistry in the room? Yes, he does. For sure, Miller does. But It's just a really hard trade to imagine.
Yep.
And then finally, on going all in just generically for the Vancouver Canucks, Greg, no, they shouldn't. I'd rather have a perpetual contender than an all-in team whose goalie gets injured and star player underperforms in the playoffs. Winning it all is too much of a crapshoot. Luck plays a huge role. Keep your first-rounders and fill in the roster with lesser moves.
This is the Tom Dundon philosophy in Carolina. Don't go all in. Take as many cracks banging at the door as you can. Eventually, the door will open. I understand it. I think it's sound philosophy. In the case of the Vancouver Canucks, you're looking at this year and another with Demko on a team-friendly deal. This year and 2 more with Quinn Hughes on a team-friendly deal. Brock Besser in his walk year heading into unrestricted free agency. I also have time for the argument you have to strike while your window is open, and it is clear this Canucks window is open.
And it's not a competitive window for me. It's that you have to adjust the title of the window. The window with this group. Because I think after, like, if you have to walk away from Brock Besser, all these sort of
the age of some players too, right? Is Miller getting better? Is Myers getting better? No, probably not.
But I think Miller's still very good for the next 2 years at least. Sort of thing. So I don't think the window of competitiveness is closing, but the window with this group, if you want to see what this group can do,
you may not have a better chance than this year.
Right.
That is also something that is worth debating. Some might say, we've heard it from a lot of our audience. No, we're going to have a better chance next year. And they cite certain things, including that, Hughes and Demko are still going to be on great contracts. You still have Paterson and Miller here. Perhaps you see improvement for some young players or some players who are new to the Vancouver Canucks. So, yeah, I can see that one both ways. Perhaps you see a push from below, right, with some of these young players, whether it's Ratu, Sasson, Lekramaki, EPD, onwards.
More than 4,400 hair salons throughout the United States and Canada. Great Clip's the world's largest hair salon brand, but they are locally owned and operated and open 7 days a week. Your time is valuable. They make sure that you're in, you're out. The app is so easy to use. No wasted time.
Yep.
Great Clips. It's going to be great.
Just last week, sent them a note online. They were ready for me at the Davis
Ready
Street location.
next text.
Absolutely. Hell of a Thursday night football game. We said this one has marquee value. This one looks like it could be one of the better primetime standalone games on the NFL calendar, and sure enough, it was. I mean, what a second half from the Packers and Lions last night. Thoroughly entertained, and Dan Campbell with his plums. Going for it on that fourth down, looking to end the game on offense. Sure enough, they do. Kick the game-winning field goal, 34-31. What a season for the Detroit Lions. They clinch a playoff spot. This is the first time in nearly 30 years where they've gone to the playoffs in back-to-back years. Haven't clinched the division yet. Minnesota's right there. And I think it's also clear, clearly the loss hurts Green Bay, but I think you're going to see 3 teams from the NFC North in the NFC playoffs.
Just to be clear, the Detroit Lions are, to borrow from our friend Jason Bruff, they are a SAD Club member.
Oh,
like they are foundational, if you will, in the SAD Club.
Founding members, yes.
And not only are they foundational and they go back decades in the SAD Club, they often have been spectacular members of the SAD Club.
Oh, unquestionably.
So you'll have to forgive the entire sporting world, and I'm sure members of the Lions fan base as well, if they're just waiting for the House of Cards to come down at some point.
So the Lions do actually have NFL championships, but it predates the Super Bowl era. In fact, it predates the Super Bowl era by a decade. Their last one was 1957. And they are further made SAD Club members by the fact that arguably the 2 greatest players in their history, Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson, had abrupt retirements when both were still at the prime of their career, right?
Yes.
Like, to lose a running back like Sanders, to lose a receiver like Megatron when they lost them was pretty shocking and soul-crushing stuff if you were a fan of the Detroit Lions. And here's the thing, Blake. They have been so bad for so long that even as a Bears fan who has sat there and watched my team be so bad for so long, I find them inoffensive. I was talking, we got a friend at the Pemby, Kylo, who's a big Minnesota Vikings fan. She said, I heard you say that on the show, and I so agree. Like, they're even in division, they're hard to hate.
Yes.
And Dan Campbell, and I went for a drink with a friend of ours from the old building last night, and he wanted to talk about Dan Campbell. And I said, like, that's as big an L, I think, as I've ever taken. Because when he came in talking about biting off kneecaps and all of that, I went, oh, my God. This, like, old football throwback slobber knocker, this caricature coach that you might have seen in the 60s and the 70s was able to woo and dupe the Ford family and get the job there. This is going to be an unmitigated disaster. Wrong. Mayor of Wrongville, wrong. What a job he has done. And the other thing, the Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford trade. If the Lions go on to win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff at quarterback, I think you can talk that is the single greatest trade for both teams in NFL history, if not Big Four history. Because Stafford already has a Super Bowl with the Rams. And when you look at the list of players that the Lions were able to get via that trade, because they got Goff, a couple first-round picks, a third-round pick. They moved around the draft board. Gibbs, the running back, Laporta, the tight end, Paschal, the defensive line rotation guy, plus the way Goff is playing himself. There are very few trades of that ilk that work out fantastically for both teams. Thus far, that's what you've got in that blockbuster of a few years ago.
I thought Jared Goff was Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
I thought
Well, it was the first overall. Wentz was the second.
But I thought his career trajectory was going to be the same. Like Burn Brightly. Remember, he thought he was
a Joe Flacco level guy. Can you win with him? Yeah, but you really have to have a great supporting cast. Guess what? They have a great supporting cast.
But he burned brightly early. Remember, he was on Ballers. They had him on the first couple seasons of Baller. Like he was.
I mean, it was a first overall pick from Cal, which, needless to say, with Rodgers and some others, was a bit of a quarterback factory there. So. How about Belichick interviewing for the University of North Carolina vacant head coaching
That's
position?
legacy staining. That's legacy staining. You
so,
can't do that.
Bill, you couldn't exist with one boss in New England, and now you want to answer to an athletic director, a school president, the boosters, and whore yourself for all the NIL alumni money and with recruits.
Honestly,
I just don't see it.
Matt, if you told me he was going back to Alabama or Ohio State or Michigan, I could see that. But North Carolina,
this is what I wonder is whether or not Belichick thinks, okay, for whatever reason, the NFL isn't going to hire me. What are my college options? I don't think it would be North Carolina.
Right.
But you do the interview for the purpose of experience interviewing for a college job, because here's the thing. The Ohio State job could be open here with Ryan Day losing again to Michigan for a 4th straight year, and the Notre Dame job could be open if Marcus Freeman, who is rumored to be a candidate for the Bears head coaching position, if he leaves. You know how much Bill likes NFL or football history, right? You can't write the history of football without talking about that little Catholic school in South Bend, Indiana. Notre Dame and Newt Rockne had an outsized effect on the way the game is played. Ohio State, the Belichick family, actually Bill grew up in Maryland, but the Belichick family, when they arrived, have deep history in the state of Ohio, which is the cradle of coaching as well. You look at all the great coaches who came out of that state. So, yes, that level of college job I could see.
Yeah, but there's like 6 schools maybe.
Yeah, if that.
Yeah.
If that. I mean, Alabama just hired a coach. That's not happening. Incidentally, I know you love my Belichick or Dion to the Cowboys hot take, but I heard someone talking about it. Actually, it was Chris Christie, the former New Jersey governor and presidential candidate, but he's
NFL insider.
He's tight with Jerry. He's a huge Cowboys fan, and he's tight with Jerry. I think it was Christie. Might have been Peter Schrager, the NFL Network guy, but who said, "Just remember, Jerry likes to be the star of the Cowboys."
Yeah.
So, do you take a high-profile coach? They haven't really had one since Bill Parcells. Speaking of head coaching, tough year to be a head coach in the city of Chicago. The Blackhawks fired Luke Richardson. The Bears just fired Matt Eberflus. The White Sox fired Pedro Grifol. The Fire fired Frank Klopas. And even their WNBA Sky fired Teresa Witherspoon. Billy Donovan of the Bulls is like the last coach standing in Chicago. Dave Ross was fired late last year by the Cubs.
So
they have turned over the head coaches
14 months
across the sporting spectrum in the Windy City over the last year. And speaking of baseball, so there are rumors now out there that the Seattle Mariners are in trade negotiations with both Chicago teams, speaking of Chicago as well. The Cubs offered middle infielder Nico Horner to the M's for Brian Wu, the pitcher, and were rejected. Now there's talk of a three-way deal where Horner would go to the M's, play second base. He can play shortstop too, but probably to play second base. The M's would send a prospect to the White Sox, and then the White Sox would send their fine left-handed pitcher Garrett Crochet to the Cubs, and the Cubs would probably have to top up the White Sox there as well. So Jerry Dipoto and the M's at least talking trade here if they're not going to be involved in any of the big free agents. And, of course, we're on Juan Soto watch. Could be any moment now.
And we're getting excited about a 7-homer, 48 RBI
I
second baseman.
believe he had a bit of a down year last year. I believe he led the National League in steals the previous
He had 31
year.
steals this year.
I believe he led the National League in steals the previous year and was a pretty good contact hitter. He's an on-base and speed guy who can play in the middle infield, both spots.
His OPS is 708, though. Oof.
No, it's not great.
Yeah.
But he'd be an upgrade on what the M's are trotting out there. And lastly, former Blue Jays catcher Danny Jansen. All he's ever known is the AL East. Remember, he had that oddity this year where he appeared for both teams in the same game.
Yeah.
He's now off to the Tampa Bay Rays. All he knows is the AL East. Jays, Sox, Rays. What would you rather watch? International Best on Best or the Stanley Cup Playoffs? Poll question results
Stanley Cup playoffs.
from our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question Thursday. Yep.
80%.
81. Very good, Blake. Burries Flow Cup Playoffs, and it's not even close, even over the Olympics. Whoa! Tim, Jerry's Four Nations nonsense is not best on best. I don't know if Jerry was an intentional error there or not.
Didn't Jeff O'Neill's alter ego?
Jeff O'Neill did an alter ego,
Jerry Bettman.
Jerry Bettman, which was quite amusing. Respect to Fro says, this is why everything sucks. We had a great international best on best tournament, and they got canceled, and now we get shittier Walmart versions, and we're just expected to cheer for this garbage.
Yeah, it's a dupe. It's a total dupe.
I do hear them, right? Like the NHL just got so jealous. No, but we want best on best too. Everyone so loves the Olympics. What about us? And Craig says Olympic best on best over the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Stanley Cup playoffs over the Four Nations faced off.
Matt, why wouldn't they go back to calling it the Canada Cup?
Because Canada is in the title, Blake. And as you know, this commissioner doesn't do Canada. He does America. It's America first. They're going to make America great again. They're going to continue stuffing hockey down Americans' throats until they regurgitate. It's been 30 years. Game hasn't grown that precipitously across the West.
I'm going to
new markets, sure. Some of them pretty good. San Jose.
I'm going to send a disappointing memo to Gary Bettman. You're never going to be FIFA, Gary.
No. Yeah.
Like it's just not going to happen. Lean into what you have.
Right. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program and beyond. And boy, I am all over this list. Dr. Rami writes in, and long-time audience member, thank you, good doctor, says, I said Rob Zamner on Torino. It was Nagano. I got my Olympic O cities mixed up there. We talked about Kevin Lankinen probably not going to play for Finland at the Four Nations behind two goaltenders. We mentioned Saros, but should have also mentioned Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is the other Finnish goalie from the Buffalo Sabres. And then I totally screwed up the opening of yesterday's show. Max Sasson was sent down, but then recalled. Missed that. 91 was the last Canada Cup, not 87. And we had best on best at the Olympics starting in 98 in Nagano, not 02. Salt Lake City.
You'll be happy to know I've got some ancestral E's and O's that we hadn't dipped into the inbox.
Good.
Check the inbox.
Good.
Jason said, Blake, it's hell or high water, not hill. That was just a misspeak. I'm clear on that one. That's from Captain Bird. Thank you, Captain.
Okay.
And Hassan, who cherishes E and O'ing me, maybe as much as Yerke does.
Like that.
Referring to the back-to-backs in Boston and Pittsburgh last week, I said playing 2 games in 23 hours, which he says is incorrect. Boston game was a 4 p.m. start. Pittsburgh is 4:30, so it's actually more than 24 hours.
24 and a half.
No, see, the way that I deduce this, Hassan, when you're playing the third period of the 4 p.m. game, the game previous, that's effectively around 6:15 p.m. The other game begins at 4:30. So within 23 hours, you will have played both games.
Okay.
Not when they started. You will be playing in games within a 23-hour span.
Leave that to the two of you to sort. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky. We are live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.